I'm Brittany.
And I'm Heather.
Welcome to Okayest Moms, the podcast.
A place to be more than just mom.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Okayest Moms, the podcast. Brittany here.
And Heather, hello.
Hi. Happy February.
It is, I'm just so happy January is over. It was the longest month ever.
It really was. It was, just in terms of the podcast, we had 5 episodes last month. That's wild.
I've been racking my brain all month because I swear I keep starting to plan for the next week. And it's how is it still January? And I just keep seeing January no matter how many pages of the calendar I turn. And I've been trying to figure out why it's been so long. And I've come up with a couple theories. It's because January is always long
days. Is that
anyway. Yeah, January is always long anyway. The kids were home for the first 2 weeks of January because I feel like all I've done is go grocery shopping all month. Every time I turn around, we're out of food. And how are we grocery shopping so much? It's because our whole family, AJ took vacation at the beginning of the month. Our whole family was home for all 3 meals, all snacks, everything for 2 solid weeks. No. So that's why we were out of coffee and out of all these things because AJ usually will have a cup or 2 of coffee at work, but he drinks an exorbitant amount of coffee. It's not fit for human consumption, the amount he drinks. And all of that was done at home. And so it's why we're out of everything. Everybody needs to leave this house.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I feel that. It has just been a slog. Plus the weather and
the rain. Yes. I feel
the worst.
Yes, but we have moved past it. We're in February now.
We've done it.
and February is the best month because it's the shortest month and it's
also
your birthday month.
Because it's my month of birth. It's Aquarius season, you all.
You Aquarii.
All right. Well, in this episode, we are talking all about sleep and bedtime, the dreaded parenthood conundrum.
And you and I both have very unique child sleep situations. And I didn't it always felt like a hot button issue for me because it was so hard. But it made me feel so much better when all these questions started rolling in and we're all still grappling with it. And I just felt very validated. So you're in the right place.
100%. So this episode is going to be a mix of our experience and what works, didn't work for us, commiseration, and the results from a few poll questions that we put up on our Instagram. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back after this quick break.
If you're feeling the new year, new you vibe, and your goal is to get organized once and for all, then you need an essential calendar.
We've both been using an essential calendar for the past few years, and their unique design allows you to see 3 months at a glance. This makes planning so much easier and guarantees that you make time for all the things you want to do, not just things you have to do.
And new to the shop this year is the Year at a Glance calendar. If you like to see your whole year mapped out, this sleek, minimalist design is perfect for you.
You can get 10% off your order from the Essential Calendar by going to okayestmoms.com/essential. That's okayestmoms.com/essential.
We'd like to introduce podcast sponsor Dry Farm Wines. Dry Farm Wines is a wine club that sources natural wines from small family farms that grow organic grapes. Each wine is dry farmed, meaning no irrigation, low alcohol, below 12.5% ABV, sugar-free, lower in sulfites, free of toxic additives, and is keto, paleo, friendly, and vegan.
Which is a fancy way of saying that you can enjoy the crisp, refreshing taste of a Sauvignon Blanc or the warm, fruit-forward taste of an Old Vine Zin without the icky feeling the next morning.
If you know what we mean. Dry Farm Wines offer memberships for reds, whites, or a mix of both that can be edited or canceled at any time.
To order Dry Farm Wines, go to dryfarmwines.com/okayestmoms to order. And if you sign up for a membership through our link, you'll get an extra bottle of wine for a penny with your first order. That's dryfarmwines.com/okayestmoms.
This episode is evidence that January was a million years long because how
And
long ago did we I feel like we posted this a year ago.
yeah.
All right. Brittany, why don't you walk us through your experience with getting children to sleep?
Well, they didn't. I was telling Heather before we started this, I don't remember anything because I have blocked it all out. It's like PTSD. I was so tired for the first 5 years of my kid's life that it's just like it's a fever dream back on it all. So I ended up co-sleeping with both of my kids, one of them much longer than the other. Harrison hardly ever slept, but as soon as he started sleeping, which is like around 2 or 3, it's like a switch flipped and then he was a sleeper. He has always been an early riser, so like 5 a.m. has always woken up. It's fine now that he's older, but when he was a baby, it was like I had one kid who would stay up late and then the other that would wake up early, and it was just not a good combination.
And Harrison would be downstairs at 4 a.m. eating frozen waffles. He's like still frozen waffles.
And he still likes frozen waffles. That was actually like pure luck because then he could get his own breakfast and I didn't have to worry about it.
No toasters. Yeah.
Nope. No toasters, no appliances. He was good to go. So yeah, that's really funny. But yeah, it's hard. And I know like the first piece of parenting advice anybody ever gives you is like say goodbye to your sleep, which is so annoying, but also so true.
And I harbor a lot of resentment for people who have sleepers. Still, even to this day, I still like, oh, your baby has been sleeping through the night since the age of 4. Well, fuck you.
This is a great episode.
Did you ever do any kind of sleep training?
We tried it with Harrison, and it was not for us. I could not handle that at all. So no, nothing consistently.
So my story with sleep is pretty similar. So one of the first things you and I bonded over is like, oh, you also aren't sleeping? Cool.
You're tired? Me too.
Well, and I think that's an important thing when you have babies, because if you aren't sleeping, you're already not in a good headspace and you're not functioning properly. And then to have someone who can't even relate to that at all is like, I know this is like one small piece of parenting, but when you're in it, you feel like, well, we're never going to relate on anything then because you can't understand how tired I am. So Isla never, ever, ever slept. Literally in the hospital, all of the nurses said, I've never seen a baby so alert. And I didn't know how to take that, but I knew that wasn't a good thing. We could truly set our watch to her like every 2 hours on the dot. She would be up and needing to sleep. And honestly, that's one of my very first clues that like something is different here. Never slept. We tried sleep training, which was aggravating because when you're already tired and cranky and on edge to listen to your child scream bloody murder, like it's not not fun. Also, like it would work a little bit. And then that's one thing nobody tells you about sleep training is you need to do it multiple times throughout their life. And it's just so, and at about 2.5, maybe 3, we had her tonsils and adenoids removed, which helped a lot because she was snoring and had little bits of apnea. And I knew that because I was sleeping next to her. When my kids moved from their cribs, we put them in queen beds because one of us would have to be in their room sleeping with them. And as I was sleeping next to her, I was like, why is my 3-year-old snoring? Wait, did she stop breathing? And like you could hear her breath like catch and start up again. And so once we got her tonsils and adenoids removed, we did notice a difference in her sleep. She did not consistently sleep through the night until the age of 4, which is a unique kind of torture. And
it's not great.
So then when Nolan came along, I remember Nolan being an infant and AJ and I just looking at each other like, wait, we just set him down in his crib and he just he just went to sleep. It's like, is this, and like, that's when things started to really click. And we're like, oh, this, our first experience was not normal at all. And at that time, AJ was working the graveyard shift. So I was home with both kids by myself. And what would happen was that it would take so long to get Isla to sleep. And I was laying in her room, waiting for her to sleep, sneaking out, doing all those things just out of pure survival. And then by the time I'd finally get her to sleep, Nolan would start to wake up for his like first feeding. And I would just like instantly pick him up and just start nursing him. Like, for the love of God, please do not wake up your sister. Like, just stop making noise, because if she wakes up, I'm going to fucking lose it. And because of that, I made him a bad sleeper too. And if I think, had I been able to let him cry a little bit, I think that he would have been able to self-soothe better. But because he would make one peep and their rooms were right next to it together, he would make one peep and I would just like instantly silence him. So I certainly made a sleep crutch there, but it was out of survival. And then, so then he ended up with a queen size bed too, because at some point he then needed some sleep support. And finally, my key to freedom was that we started letting them sleep together, and they became each other's sleep crutches. And now they don't need us.
That's exactly how we got through it too. Because I didn't, Sully was a terrible sleeper, kind of the same way I trained him to be a terrible sleeper, because we were co-sleeping, and when he would wake up, I'd just turn over and pull my boob out, and then he'd go back to sleep. And he was in our bed for a long time. And when he wasn't in our bed and he was in a regular bed, he would come to our bed in the middle of the night for a long time. It didn't change until we moved into this house, and their room is on the other side of the house. And he was too afraid to go all the way across the house to our bedroom. But they also share a bunk bed, often share a bed. Like, they both sleep on the bottom and all their stuffed animals are on the top. But yeah, survival, like you said, like I would not have been able to survive without getting that sleep with them sleeping in the bed. I don't know.
Yeah. I think co-sleeping is one of the very easiest things to be like, I'm never going to do that when I have kids. But it just, and we tried it for a long time just because I wasn't comfortable. I couldn't sleep comfortably when Isla was in the bed as a baby. And so I would say, like, fight it. And no, I don't want her in here. But then it just got to the point where, like, any amount of sleep, any way I can get it is better than no sleep. And so that's just, I think if you're willing to die on that hill, good for you. You handle sleep deprivation much better than I do. I think that's an important thing too, now that I say it out loud, that it depends a lot on the parent's ability to handle sleep deprivation. AJ can get like 3 or 4 hours of sleep and function. If I get less than 6 hours of sleep, like, I am not even remotely close to the best version of myself. Like, I'm not even remotely close to like a decent version of myself. Like, I cannot do it. And when you have to work with that little sleep and then wake up and deal with children all day who are also tired and cranky, like, it's just those, like, you mentioned PTSD earlier, and I'm truly not trying to make light of it, but like, I really do think I have PTSD from like those early toddler years because they didn't sleep at all. And it was just so hard to manage. So
you don't even really realize that. I mean, you're tired, but the way that it affects every aspect of your life, like when it comes to focus, when it comes to like getting anything done, it's a special kind of torture.
It really, really is. And I hope that's what they're doing in Guantanamo, because it's very effective.
Oh my gosh. I know. Oh God. Just even like going back.
It's a lot. Like, I could,
me out.
Yeah, I could like start crying right now just thinking about that. And yeah, I'm not proud of the things that I would text AJ in the middle of the night when he was up working and I was awake.
Well, there was one point when Tyler was sleeping in the guest room because it just was the way that all of our family got the best sleep. And I remember being like so embarrassed about that. Like, my husband can't even sleep in our bed. Like this is terrible. This is never going to end. But like, I think that's very common.
I think it's very common. And honestly, like and I remember AJ and I had conversations like that too. And I think like there is something to be said about like the husbands feeling pushed out of their bed by the kids. And like, I mean, yeah, like whatever. I think that's a common feeling for husbands. And we finally just had to like have a very honest conversation about it. And it's like, this isn't going to last forever. This, like, right now, sleep is more important than anything else because nothing else can happen unless we're both well rested. And so it was survival for sure. So,
oh, God, that's over.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so let's talk about some of these poll questions we did. And as soon as I was looking at the data, I instantly realized this was a stupid poll because we should have started with how old is your kid?
I know.
So,
but then
take that with a grain of salt. You know, I'm new to creating data and studies. Okay, so
this is very scientific.
It is. So our first question is, what time do your kids go to bed? And it was pretty evenly split between 7 or 8 or 8 to 9. So most kids are going to bed between the hours of 7 and 9 o'clock, which is a pretty big span depending on your age. So right now, and we're going to kind of touch on this in a little bit, but because we're at the age where we're getting so many activities later in the evening, we are pretty strict 7 o'clock. Like we're at 7 o'clock, we start moving upstairs and, you know, brushing, pajamas, shower, like whatever needs to happen starts happening. So they're in bed usually between 7:30 and 7:45. They're getting older and I feel like maybe they don't need it, but then there are so many nights where that doesn't happen. So the nights that I am able to make that happen, I stick very strongly to that because my kids react like their mother when they don't get enough sleep and then no one's happy. So
yeah, we are pretty early to bed too because my kids wake up so early. Harrison he'll be 11 in a few days and he hasn't really fought me on it at all. I'm wondering like at what age he's going to be like, I need a later bedtime. But I think because he gets up so early, he's tired at the same time as Sullivan still. So I'm just going to keep it going until.
Oh yeah. Don't, unless he brings it up.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
I also want to mention for the people who are still putting their kids to bed at 6:30 or like have to be home, who have to be home and like had dinner eaten by 5:30
or 45.
Yeah. I just want to encourage you to keep dying on that hill because it is worth it. I was that person who like could not leave the house after 5 because it would throw off bedtime. And I took a lot of shit from it, like a lot, because we have the oldest kids on both sides of the family. And we were the trailblazers who had to like establish bedtime boundaries. And we got a lot of shit for it. And it was worth it because I needed sleep or the downtime that putting them to sleep allotted me. So
yeah,
if your kids are going to bed earlier, one, I think that's still an important part of why I'm holding so strongly to the bedtime as much as I can, because if we're out at soccer or whatever until 8 o'clock on one night, like you're cutting into my time now. I've started to tell my kids, like, I'm off the clock at 7:30. Like I am not mom after 7:30. So if you want to like mess around while you're supposed to be brushing your teeth and you like don't get your story and you don't get tucked in, like, I'm sorry, I'm Heather now at 7:31 and I don't know you. So like the TV is calling my name and the good snacks. Goodbye. Like I'm done with you. So I think that's fine. You're allowed to have your time too.
Well, that was the problem too with little kids is I wanted that time in the evening and then I'd stay up for it. And then I'd look at the clock and be like, shit, one of them's going to wake up in 20 minutes.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah. And then of course they never would wake up then. And then you would just, yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Okay. We can't talk more about that. We can't go back.
In the cold sweats.
On average, how long does it take your kids to actually fall asleep? So from the time like you say goodnight, turn off the lights until they're actually out. And overwhelmingly, most of you said under 30 minutes. And that's pretty true in my house too. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Nolan definitely has a harder time. He's my little worry wart. He's my anxious guy, and of course, anybody with anxiety knows that all comes out at bedtime, and which was totally true for me as a kid too. So he's our little elf sneaking down the stairs to ask us things. One night he smelled me pop popcorn, and he comes downstairs and goes, "Are you guys eating Brussels sprouts?" And we're like, "What?" Do you? So it's like the things he comes up with to like come downstairs. It's like, good night.
It's your comedic relief.
So I've gotten into the habit of saying good night. I will see you tomorrow, not before tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow.
He comes in at 12:01. Like, hey, it's tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he would. The next one asked if your child went to sleep with a pacifier, and 68% of you said yes. Neither of your kids ever took binkies, did they?
No, they had my boob. So
Yeah.
went to sleep with a pacifier? Yeah, they did. But it was connected to my body.
Yeah. Isla took one, but it was never like the calming security object that it was for some kids. And she actually weaned off it really easily. This is my hot tip if you need to wean your kid off a binky. When she was about, oh gosh, it was when I was pregnant with Nolan. So under 18 months, my mom took her overnight and I forgot to pack her binkies and she just didn't have them. And mom wasn't there to deal with it. And so like she just was like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have it. And like we weren't like trying to take her binky away or anything like that. But because my mom had said like, we don't have it. And I was like, okay, do I need to run it over there? And she's like, no, don't worry about it. She's fine. And then we're like, well, I guess we're not going back. She, yeah, if she can do it, then she can do it here. So
Opportunity.
Make grandma deal with it. That's my hot tip.
Okay, at what age did you stop tucking them in? 44% said 10 to 13. 27% said 5 to 9. 24% said 13 to 16. The 5 to 9 is surprising to me.
That was surprising to me. And I'm wondering if maybe people are expanding or changing their definition of tucking in. But both my kids are in the 5 to 9 age range, and they're still, for us, it looks like a story together in one kid's bed. And then we'll split up and then we'll spend, 5 or 10 minutes kind of rehashing the day, talking about whatever they need to talk about. Because both my kids, that's like the best time to pull information out of them. Whether that's a stalling technique or just like they're calm and able to communicate, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever stop tucking my kids in. I am in that spot where I still like to go say goodnight, but I'm also very much looking forward to the day where I can just be like, okay, go to bed. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But I still see myself just like, like walking in and checking in and, like saying goodnight.
That's kind of what we do now. Like that's our version of tucking in because our bedtime has like morphed depending on what activity we have that night. But if it's like a night at home, they'll shower and brush teeth and we'll all go back out to the living room and do reading out there and then watch an episode of The Office and then they'll go to bed. And they kind of tuck themselves in, then we go in and give them a kiss goodnight and say goodnight.
Yeah.
But that's still like tucking in to me. Like you still go in and check on them before they go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a long letting go process.
I'm not ready.
Do you use a sound machine? 51% said yes.
I joke all the time that my kids are going to be those kids that go to college with a sound machine and their roommates are going to hate them.
Maybe. I didn't even know what a sound machine was until I had kids. Like that was not on my radar at all. And I mean, I tried everything under the sun to get Isla to sleep. Sound machine, music, binky, like literally everything. And she uses an Echo Dot in her room and plays a playlist called Dream Time. Because what we've always said in the past is I can't say her name because she'll say it, but we'll tell the lady in a machine to play nighttime music. And that's always it's a playlist called Dreamtime. And every once in a while, she'll switch it up and play something different. And so now we've had to specifically ask for Dreamtime. And that's her white noise. Nolan will deal with it if he's sleeping in Isla's room with her because he knows she likes it, but he doesn't need it. So.
Yeah, nope, we are fully addicted, and all of us are because we slept in our bed for so long, so we had it in there, and now I can't sleep without it. It's
I can attest that Brittany, you must have hearing loss for the volume you play that thing at.
Listen, I
It's like a jet engine. All right. On average, how many hours do they sleep per night? 67% of you said 8 to 10 hours. And that's such a fraught question, I know, because no matter how hard you try, you cannot make another human sleep. And that is, in a nutshell, the most aggravating thing about parenting.
You can't make them do anything. It's so annoying.
It's so annoying.
When do they usually wake up? 86% was 6 to 8 a.m. Oh, God, we're abnormal.
Wow, you knew that. My kids are they cannot sleep past 6:45 on the dot. Even on the weekends, 6:45, there they are. And it took a lot of work to get to 6:45. A lot. Huge shout out to Okay to Wait clocks. You saved my life.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Let's dive into some of the questions that you guys left for us. The big one, and I think you and I are going to disagree on this one, is melatonin. I think it was melatonin for kids was the question.
Yeah.
But tell us all about your melatonin.
I take a CBD that has a tiny bit of melatonin in it almost every night. And I can sleep without it, but it's not as good as sleep.
What about your kids?
My kids do take melatonin periodically when they're having a hard time settling down. And I've kind of left that up to them at this point because they kind of know like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sleep, or just kind of like the listen to your body thing. And it's literally like 1 milligram. It's the child's gummies. You get them at Target. And that I emailed their doctor and they're like, he said it's fine periodically, obviously not every single night. So we use it. And I know that's like controversial, but I honestly think that it is used more than people will admit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I said, we have tried everything under the sun, and melatonin always had a very adverse effect on Isla. Benadryl also has an adverse effect on her because I'm not gonna lie, we tried Benadryl in a time of desperation to get her to sleep, and that blew up in our faces. I remember one of the first times we did the liquid form because she was, I don't know, maybe 2 or so. And I mean, she was having like night terrors already. And so that probably didn't help. But we gave her a couple drops of melatonin, and she just woke up with just terror in her eyes. And was like, whoa, what did you see? And so,
oh God.
Yeah. And so since then we had tried it like maybe once or twice, and I don't know that we've ever given it to Nolan. I have just started taking it. I haven't ever taken it prior to like maybe a year or 2 ago because I was always worried that I was going to like sleep too deeply, or I don't know. The few times I do have really weird, crazy dreams too. So, but I do like it to reset a sleep pattern. I think that's where it's most beneficial because I stayed up till midnight on New Year's, and my sleep has been shit since then because that little bit
off.
It really did. And so I have used melatonin a few times since then to like reset, but I think that there are other things that you need to do in conjunction with the melatonin. Like I love I want to call it a sad light. I don't know what it's really called.
That is what it's called, I think.
Is it a sad light? Okay.
Seasonal affective disorder light.
Yeah. So I really think it's more than just like taking a supplement to fix your sleep. I think you kind of have to do a couple things. So, what I do to reset my sleep, and I've kind of tried to replicate this with my kids, but like they don't give a shit, they're kids. But so to take the melatonin to be in bed early, I remember reading somewhere, because I read every single thing anybody had to say about child sleep. And one thing that really stuck with me, because it really did make a really big difference, was something about a sleep window. And that's this idea that, because, when you look at a sleep cycle, it's like 90 minutes or something. And like the way your REM waves go up and down and stuff, you have this window, and everybody has this window, and it's a different time for every person. And you kind of have to just like trial and error your way to find it. But that's when you need to be like in bed, ready to like let your body relax, and then you'll be better able to fall asleep. Because I think everybody can relate to that or has experienced that when you're trying to fall asleep and it's like just not going to happen. And so I found like doing the melatonin at night to kind of help me fall asleep and like stay asleep, doing the sad light in the morning, because getting that light in your eyes like helps your circadian rhythm, and then really paying attention to the sleep window and making myself be in bed. That's been a big part of it too for me. Is so what I've started doing is after we put the kids to bed, I'll wash my face, do my skincare, brush my teeth, and do all that stuff, and like be ready for bed, and then I'll go watch TV. That way, because so many times I've been downstairs and like half falling asleep, and then I go upstairs and get ready for bed, and then I'm like awake. And so that way when I'm tired, I can just go in bed and fall asleep. That's helped a lot. So
you take your contacts out then?
No, I have to keep them in. So I'll go and take my contacts out, and like if I'm gonna have a snack, then I'll brush my teeth too. But it's been surprising like how much earlier my sleep window is than I thought, because usually I'd go to bed at like 10 o'clock or so. But then I was going upstairs at 10 o'clock, and I wasn't really getting into bed until like 10:30 by the time I like did stuff and like, fucked around on my phone and did all that stuff. And now I'm aiming to be in bed by 9:30, and it's just a 30-minute difference or so, but it makes a big difference in the quality of my sleep. So
yeah, going to bed earlier, limiting alcohol, and
that's another big one. I forgot about that. That's been huge for me.
Me too. That pandemic, man. Talk about survival mode.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question was how to get kids to sleep in hotels or if you're away from home. And my advice is good luck.
Never leave your home. That's my advice.
Never leave your house.
When Isla was, she must have been like just a year, we went to my cousin's wedding in Reno, which was about 2 hours away. And we had a hotel room, and we packed up in the middle of the night and drove home the 2 hours, because it was so, she was just crying because she had never been out of her crib, because we just had never had a reason. Like, she was such a terrible sleeper. It had never dawned on us, like, let's go on a trip, because we're like, why would we take this shit show on the road? And so she'd never not slept in a crib, and she was crying, and we felt bad because there were people like, on either side of the walls of us. And we're like, this is stupid. We're not sleeping. Like, we may as well just not sleep and drive home. So that's my answer.
You gotta do what you gotta do. Honestly, this is where co-sleeping came in handy, because they slept next to me and they were fine,
Yeah. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how much of a basket case I was about her and sleep. And I thought any little thing out of the routine would throw her off, because it did, because neurodiversity, and it was a disaster. So I know people they make like those pod things that go over a pack and play, and it's kind of like dark out. It's kind of like a little tent almost. And I know people like those, but
I know people put their babies in closets or
that's a good one, or in the bathroom, so that it's dark and you can kind of like shut them off from everything. Yeah, that's as good of advice as I have. Honestly, my best tip is just don't go anywhere. All right. We did have quite a few questions about helping kids with ADHD sleep. And I'm going to broaden the ADHD and just call it neurodivergence, because ADHD and OCD and autism and all those things are, I mean, we're talking degrees of differences. They're all very similar. Okay, so some things that have helped with us. So like I said, Isla's neurodivergence and sleep appeared very, very early on. And we literally tried everything. One thing, and I can't say that one thing helped really, because nothing helped, but they all helped in small ways. So one was the music or sound machine. That was her problem. Had always been that she just couldn't calm her brain and turn it off to fall asleep. And so the music was kind of one auditory way to help with that. Night lights have been big. And we love the LumiPet night lights because she can control it. It's not like stuck to the wall, and it's something that she can have right next to her, which has helped. Weighted blankets are big. I know those have become really popular in the last few years for everybody. I will caution you to be careful if you're buying a weighted blanket for a child. You really do. I think for adults, it's not as important to pay attention to the percentage of weight you're putting on them, but for kids, and especially kids with sensory processing differences, you want to be very cognizant of how much weight you're putting on. So a weighted blanket should be 10% of their body weight. And I can link where we bought hers from as a child when she is still a child, but when she was really little. It was a really cool company because we could customize the blanket. So at the time she was really into princesses. So we chose like a special princess blanket. And some days she liked it, some days she didn't. But, you know, it's just kind of one of those things where we threw everything at the wall to see what would work. Another thing I know people like, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a sheet made of Lycra. And so or like a spandexy material. So it's really stretchy. And it kind of goes over the whole mattress so that they're underneath the stretchy. So it's like a fitted sheet that they're under, and it gives enough sensory feedback for them that it doesn't provide as much weight as a weighted blanket, but it kind of gives them that like cocoon-like feeling. Mm-hmm. And we haven't tried that, but I know people have a lot of success with that.
We have tried that, and Harrison loved it for a while. He would have that sheet over, and he'd bring his favorite blanket in there with him, so it was even like more cozy. Yeah. And yeah, he loved it. He hasn't really used it much lately, but it got us through some tough spots.
Yeah, and honestly, the biggest thing with Isla has been kind of letting her figure out how she wants to sleep. And she wants to be bundled up in everything with like literally her whole body covered under the blankets. And I, you know, especially when she was younger, I would always go in and like pull the blanket off her face, and so that she wasn't smothering. And now that she's older, I don't worry so much about it, of course, but I mean, that she truly is more comfortable that way. She wants her entire face covered. And where that would not be comfortable for me in the slightest, that's what she likes. And that's, you know, if that works for you, then that works.
And you switched to morning showers because they were so sweaty while they slept.
Yes. It's like, I don't understand how it's comfortable to wake up with like sopping wet hair because you've been under so many blankets. But, you know, like, do you, girl? A sleep mask was a huge game changer for her. Huge. Because I think she needs it really, really dark. And I think also probably like the sensory feedback of like not being able to open your eyes helped a lot too. But, you know, again, these are things like you can't put on a 2-year-old because, you know, for obvious reasons. So, and then as far as other like behavioral things that have helped, cutting video games off during the week has been huge for both my kids. Just night and day difference of every behavior, but especially sleep, and really being cognizant of their diets. And I mean, not that my kids don't ever have a tree, and like, I mean, there's candy everywhere in our house, and every time we turn around, a grandma is bringing them some kind of sugary something, but really limiting that before bedtime has made a big difference, and making sure that they're getting outside in the sunlight and moving their body some way has all of those things together have really helped with the sleep. And I know all those things are hard to do every single day, but it's just something, it's a way our family has adapted because sleep has been so fucking hard for so long. Those are just like natural things that we've had to do because this is what we need to do.
Yeah. And obviously, it goes without saying, like, what works for one family might not work for another. It's like truly trial and error and knowing your kids. And so, like, nothing, we're sharing our experience. We're not experts by any means, but just had to throw that out there. Okay, last question. Sports practices, activities that push back bedtime.
This is something that came up for our family just this year because now that we're just kind of at that age at first and second grade where we are hitting more sports activities and things like that. And I think we're still in that little sweet spot where they're the younger age group. So they're getting the, like the prime practice times where,
Yeah, enjoy it.
yeah, I know. So we're not like practicing under lights yet and stuff like that. But I think my take on the question was, how are you managing, maintaining a routine and a bedtime and ensuring they get enough rest and sleep, but also balancing doing all these things? Because of course we want our kids to do activities because we know there are benefits to doing these activities, but of course there are benefits to needing sleep.
We had, the fall was really a lot for us. We had something every single night, sometimes two things where kids had to be in separate places, and they were all late nights. And honestly, the only reason we survived it is because of all of the legwork I put in, and Tyler too, like making sure they were fed, making sure that, their pajamas were ready to go when we got home so they could shower and get into bed. It was honestly a lot of work, which is also why I was like a psychopath in the fall. And I don't think there was anything I could have done to make that better because it was just the way that the practices fell. And
Right.
anyway, I don't know. I don't recommend it, but sometimes it's going to happen. And I think just being prepared and having a routine down so your kids know what to expect is the only way to survive.
Yeah. Well, and then to kind of touch back on the neurodivergence of it all. So this is our first year. Right now, Isla is in so many activities. I feel like I need to take a cut of her allowance because I'm her personal secretary. Like, I feel like managing her calendar is one of the hardest things on my plate right now. But we have noticed such a difference in her behavior, and I think that's because of the activities she's doing. She truly enjoys everything she's doing. And one of them, she doesn't get home until like 8:30, which is like, that's very, very late for us on a school night. And sometimes she'll come home and she's still hungry. And this girl's a bottomless pit lately. She must be on the verge of a growth spurt. So she's not getting to bed till like 9 o'clock because she's hungry. And like at first I was like, this is not working. This can't, like, how are we going to do this for the next like however many weeks? She's going to be a monster tomorrow, all these things. But the next morning has not been a hard wake up. And even her teachers mentioned a difference in her coping abilities at school. And I mean, that's truly the only thing that's changed. So it has to be those things. So I think any parent who's ever had a kid struggle with sleep, your immediate reaction is going to be to like buckle at the thought of like giving that up. But if it's something that the kid truly enjoys, I think it's going to be a worthwhile trade-off because they're going to find they're going to get something else out of that experience. And I think if you're open and honest, because when we started this activity with her, I said, I know you are really wanting to do this, but here's my concern. I'm worried that you aren't going to get enough sleep and that's going to make everything else harder. And so we had talked about that. And I think maybe that made the difference for her. Like she realized, oh, this is something I really want to do. And so I'm going to have to give up this. And that, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. So I think it's definitely harder when you're dragging a kid. Like, we've all had that experience where like halfway through the season, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I'm not advocating for quitting in the middle of the season because I think it's important for your kid to stick it out, which unfortunately means that you have to stick it out. But like, there's a lesson in that too. And so I think being extremely choosy about what activities you're choosing that are going to impede on the sleep make all the difference.
Totally. And yeah, like that is a game changer when the kids love what they're doing. Yeah, for sure.
And if it's not, if everybody hates soccer by the third weekend, then next year when the signups come around and they say they want to play, because they probably will, then you can say, remember how X, Y, and Z happened and everybody was grumpy by November? Like, so.
Because newsflash, even when they love it, everybody's going to be grumpy by November.
Well, yeah, that's true. But all right. Well, hopefully that helps some of you out there. If your kids are still not sleeping, I know you've probably heard 10,000 people at this point in your life say that it will get better. And it really does. And I know it doesn't help to hear it right now, but you aren't alone. And if your kids have slept through the night since day one, go away.
Don't talk about it.
I don't want to hear about that.
All right. Thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, review. It really helps us get found by new listeners. And we love you so much. Thanks for listening.
If you like what you just heard, and we hope you do, you can find more of us online at www.okayestmoms.com. We're also on all social media platforms, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Okayest Moms Blog. Or if you want to, you can send us an email at hey@okayestmoms.com.
Hi, I'm Tammy Hackbarth, and I'm a life and work coach, keynote speaker, author, and host of the 100% Guilt-Free Self-Care podcast. You know what you need to do to live your best life. Feeling guilty isn't helping you do it. You may believe self-care is selfish. It isn't. You may believe that you're broken. You aren't. From exercise to mindset to books that will change your life, Tammy's here to remind you that you matter, and self-care is the foundation to your dream life and having the time, energy, and bandwidth to create the world you want to live in. Join me over on the 100% Guilt-Free Self-Care podcast every Thursday for new episodes.